Hey guys, welcome back to the Civilmation Podcast. I am your host, Civil Spider. So for those of you that are new, first of all, welcome. And today we happen to have a very special guest on the podcast. And before I get into that, for those that don't know what the Civilmation Podcast is, essentially the podcast goes about me talking to people who work in the animation business, not necessarily in the big mainstream position, but just in some way, if you contribute to animation, if that's something you're passionate about and you're doing it for a living or even as a hobby, I want to know about you, I want to talk to you, and that way we can put you on here and kind of let the world know about you, because some people might not know, or in this case, you guys might actually know who the artist is. So today, I have again a very special guest. As you guys know him, it is Danger Dolan from Planet Dolan. Big YouTuber, 5.6 million subscribers. You guys know who he is if you know who I am. But Dolan, are you there? Can you hear me?
Yep, boy. How's it going?
Good. Again, sorry to catch you so early, but thank you for coming on, and I really hope this podcast goes well, and I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah, no worries. I'm happy to be here.
So, I'm going to start off with the simple question, as I always ask. Is Dolan your actual name? If not, how did you kind of come up with Dolan?
Yeah, no. That was more, every time you got to enter a name for a thing, be it, like an email or like a character name, you're always put on the spot. You don't know what to do. And so at the time, I just thought that the stupid Dolan meme based on Donald Duck was funny. And so I was like, I'm just gonna take that. Although back when I made the channel name, it was the DD Guides, because that stood for that stood for Double Dragon, and that again was like a shameless ripoff. But I knew I was going to change it later on to something even worse.
Wait, so the Double Dragon, what's that a ripoff from?
The Double Dragon game. It's just like a side-scrolling beat 'em up back from the NES days, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so I made it that, and then I was like, no, but I'll keep it intentionally vague so I can change it later on.
And then, because if it was like the DD Guides, is Guides just something else you made up, or was it kind of like a meaning to it? Like, was it like a book or something?
No, the guides just, like, when I first started out doing these channels, it was just guides on World of Warcraft, and so I'd make guides on how to fight bosses. So that was what the guides was for. Yeah, it was the Double Dragon guides, but then I changed it not too long after that.
Well, awesome. I actually didn't even know that myself. So that kind of nicely ties up to the next question. Now, this question is kind of broad because for you, it applies a little differently. As many of us know you, you're Danger Dolan, you have Planet Dolan, you have Super Planet Dolan, and I've heard that you've had like another old movie or gaming channel or something like that. But with this being your profession in terms of running a business through YouTube and such, and in the animation business, how did you start? Like you mentioned, the DD Guides, was that your actual start on YouTube, or did you have something prior to that?
Yeah, I did have a channel prior to that one, but that was like, I only worked on that for about 3 months, but I worked on it really hard. And then, once I was like, well, no one cares about this field, I may as well try like one of my other interests, which was gaming. So I started doing guides and just general discussion and stuff on World of Warcraft. And then after a while, like, of just kind of searching around YouTube, I found countdown videos. It's like, these look really interesting. I was kind of binge watching. I'm like, I think I could do some of these. These look really cool, because I'd been studying writing for so long. And then when you're studying writing, you do a lot of research on different, like, just vague fields. Like, for one short story, I had to research what it's like to clean apartments and hotels and stuff, and I had to know exactly what like a maid would do in order to do the job properly. Mm-hmm. And so when you do stuff like research weird stuff like that, it was like, well, this is kind of a natural fit. And so I started doing that and quite well. And so after a while, it was like, well, I've always had an interest in animation. Just as a kid, I was just growing up watching Cartoon Network and that kind of thing, and I just kind of binge watch like all their shows. And so I was like, well, this would be a cool opportunity to kind of contribute as well. And so we started thinking about like a way to do it that's like educational but also have a bit of comedy in it. So in the countdowns, it was only possible to script in a little bit of comedy. but on SPD we could do a little bit more. So yeah.
So then you said that you studied writing. So is that innately how you started? Like you were a writer, and then you saw YouTube videos, and then that's how you got into it?
Yeah, the writing is like the kind of my specialty. It's just taking information and condensing and making it the most interesting it can be, and then kind of presenting it. Doing the voice acting and the editing and everything else was more just out of necessity, because I didn't have anyone else to help me out with that stuff.
Right.
But there's actually kind of a side effect of the main channel being centered on Danger Dolan. That was just kind of an accident because I had to voice this stuff. I never considered myself a voice actor. I just kind of did it. And as you can hear, I'm a very monotonous voice.
Nah,
but I try and give it a bit of personality sometimes.
So then, did you practice the Danger Dolan voice, or were you just kind of like, if it comes out well, it does? Or how did you come about with that?
Yeah, no, it's just a real voice, man. I didn't try anything. It was just how I talk, and because I was scripting doing the scripts myself, I could imbue a lot of my own my delivery into it. So if I was going to attempt a joke or just make a side comment, it was actually quite natural. I always try and write so that it sounds natural when you read it, but as you kind of discover when you write for a different voice actor, it's very difficult to keep the original delivery that was intended, and you have to give kind of copious notes if you do try that, and you have to use italics and bolding and have comment bubbles that describe what to do.
Right, which is kind of like letting them know, hey, can you kind of shout this when you say it, or can you sound confused? Those little side notes?
Yeah, we have a lot of that in SPD, actually, the animations. But for the countdowns, no, it's not as necessary because, the information is just very dry by its nature. But it really depends on the type of script, really.
So let me see. So your main focus is writing. Did you actually study that? Was that your college study, or how did you do that?
Yeah, so over here it's called TAFE, and it's just the thing you do after high school, and it's basically the same as college for you guys, except we don't we don't live there or anything like that. It's just a higher form of education. It's just like going to a regular high school, except when you go there, you can kind of leave anytime you want. Teachers don't give a crap because you're there. You've elected to be there.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
And how long does that last then? Is it kind of like a 4-year thing, 2 years?
It depends what you want to go for. There is proper university, and TAFE is just kind of like it's just something you elect to do, and it can be quite cheap. Depends if it's if you're under 25, they give you giant discounts because they want you to actually do it. Once you're over that age, though, they assume that you've probably made a living and you can afford a bit more because they need to pay their own bills.
Right.
It's just a very accessible form of education.
It kind of sounds here it kind of sounds like community college for us.
Yeah. Pretty
okay.
much.
No, but that's good.
Yeah, so I did that just because it was so accessible to do. And so I did that for quite a few, I think it was about 3 years or so I did that. But by the end, I was so disinterested because when you first start out, they teach you a lot of creative writing techniques and how to write novels and short stories and screenplays. By the end, though, they only teach you editing. Copy editing is the number one field that, once you finish your course, that's the job field that you go into. But I wasn't really interested in that at all. The course I did was professional writing and editing, not creative writing.
So I'm when it comes to writing itself, I'm pretty ignorant on the subject. I really don't know much. So anytime I see jobs that are we're looking for editors, my brain, I'm like, oh, a video editor, but in reality it's a writing editor. But what exactly does an editor do? Are you guys I don't mean to water it down, but is it proofreading or something, or how does that work?
Yeah, pretty much. I'd say proofreading is the number one thing. It's also the most boring part of just going through and making sure that there are no typos, no mistakes, and doing some research to make sure that what they've written is accurate. Or in the case of something creative, if you had a screenplay for a movie or TV show, you just gotta read through it and give them kind of copious notes on how they could improve or suggestions on a different direction they could go. Or again, you could do some research and make sure it's all accurate. Right. You're just kind of proofing to make sure that what they've written is going to work for the desired field that they're putting it out in. It's probably the best way I could describe it.
For those of you that are listening, because I don't even think I even asked Derek, and he's a writer, about that, but okay, so that's something I learned new. Okay, so again, you got into writing, that is what you studied, and then at some point you said you watched YouTube, you saw countdown videos, you were interested, you started your own, thus, it's kind of like a snowball thing, it started leading to more and more. But in terms of that, then, not how exactly, but what was it exactly that kind of really made you, like, stick to this, made you be like, you know what, I think this is what I want to do, this is what I'm really interested in? Like, how did that come about?
I guess it's just what I learned after I did the writing course, because when I was in the writing course I was also writing a novel as well, and once I finished that novel, like, I had kind of a profound moment where I was like, oh shit, like, no one can read this thing. I don't even know how to get people to read this thing. That's like, whoa, I hadn't even considered this. I just assumed that you finish something, you put it out there, and then people just kind of share it around, you're all good. There's actually a huge, like, business behind it of, like, how the hell do you get people to look at a thing? And so that was, like, really opened my eyes that, you can't just do that. That had always been my plan. And so from that point onwards, I only really cared about making things that people can actually see. And so in order for that to happen, either you need to be the kind of person who can create a platform like the people at, like, Google or whatever it is, so that other people can, get their stuff out there. Or you can be someone who creates for those platforms, and therefore people can find it because everything's all together. When you create a novel or a short story or something, there is no platform for that unless you know of one, or a website that can publish it. But even then, like, how do you make money from that kind of thing? Whereas with YouTube, when you make videos, it's there's a natural algorithm that helps you out. It's suggested videos getting put on the homepage, getting shouts from other content creators, that kind of thing. There's a good network for that kind of stuff that you don't get from a solitary website or that kind of thing.
So then, first of all, about that novel, have you done anything with it since? Like, have you tried editing it or anything, or?
Oh yeah, no, I spent quite a while editing it, but it's a piece of crap. I had a look at it a few months ago actually, and so there are some good ideas in it, but ideas, like, anyone can have great ideas, but executing it is the number one skill involved in writing. And a lot of people don't even want to think about that. Everyone just wants to get have their idea and be like, I'm going to write this, and then they spend 2 minutes on it and they're like, oh, this is too hard. It's kind of like when you want to learn an instrument and, like, you're thinking, oh, it'd be really cool to learn the saxophone. You pick it up and you're not immediately, like, extremely good at it. You're like, damn it, screw this. I'm gonna have a
go do something else. Right.
Yeah. So it's same thing with the writing. And so I was thinking about it, and I thought, if I just threw away like 90% of this, kept and kind of rearranged things, it would be a lot better. I think something I've learned since then is it's not necessarily about structure, but it's about the kind of pacing of things, and starting off with a bang and starting off with the right storyline. There are a million storylines you could pick from, but there are only a few good choices because you need a story that's going to have potential moving forward.
Okay, so
explain that potential.
Oh, sorry to cut you off. Just
That's
before
right.
I lose this. So then, okay, so you had the book or your novel rather. Put it aside because was it basically the fact that there's so much process in terms of like you said, you get to make something, but then you're like, there's no real way I can even publicize it correctly, and if I do, like you said, how are you even able to make money from it? So is that kind of factor of wanting to create and kind of just putting it right away to the public, is that how you were like, well, what if I make videos and from there, I'll do my own thing, which is writing. I'm sure you write your own scripts and stuff, and then just you kind of learned everything as you went along. Is that basically it?
Yeah. I mean that's the number one thing isn't it? Like, first off, you have to be able to survive, and so YouTube was like an actual way to make money off the things that you're doing. Whereas, I mean, at that time, there was like nothing else like that. Like on the internet, you just look for a job. And so by creating content on YouTube, you can kind of fund yourself, which was amazing. And you don't have to answer to any boss, which was even better. So answer to a boss doesn't know what they're doing. It's just the most demoralizing thing that it's just horrible.
So then how long have you been doing this then?
You mean YouTube or writing?
Like, let's even say, like, in general, from your very first, whether you want to consider it your very first upload or to the day that you made a YouTube account, like, how long have you been watching or doing YouTube?
Oh, from the very start. I was in high school and I was watching YouTube like all the time. In fact, one project I did for my business management course in high school. So this would have been around about 2006 or so. So it was kind of when YouTube was starting out. Yeah, I made a couple of videos that were just kind of comedy parody things, and pretty much all the friends and teachers I showed it to were like, whoa, like if you could find some way to like use this in a field that in like a business, like you do really well. And I was like, oh sweet, like that's good because I'm literally crap at everything else. Like that's really it makes you feel good. So yeah, at that point, I mean that was like really early on. And so once I finished my TAFE course, my writing course, that's when I started seriously considering YouTube, because I've been watching it for so long, and all the channels I've been watching seem to be doing okay, and I was like, well, this looks like a lot of fun, so I gave it a shot.
Then I have not an idea. So okay, a lot of times whenever I hear from like a friend or just someone that I know, they'll even ask me like, hey, how do you do your videos? Like, I want to make them, but I always feel limited because of technology. Like, they don't have the best whatever. And I always tell them, like, you don't need the best whatever as long as, like, you have, let's say, a phone. Even if it's a crappy laptop, it's still a laptop. So for you starting, how did you start? What kind of equipment did you have? And I don't know, can you give any insight to the audience of saying, like, hey, you don't necessarily need like $1,000 computer.
Yeah, you don't need it. I definitely didn't have that. We had a family computer. It ran like arse. So it ran like arse. And so it took ages to render any video. And there was a 30% chance every time I rendered that the software would just crash. Every time. And so if I'm going to render a video, I have to set aside like a few hours because I know that there's a huge chance it's going to crash every time. And so what I did with the early videos is I actually used Photoshop, and I used a tool that recorded video like of just my desktop, and I would just kind of move things around in there as like a really basic like editing platform. In order to use Sony Vegas, because that was like kind of that, and I think Premiere were like the only things you get back then that was super expensive. I just pirated it. There are always ways of doing it online.
Wait, actually, what version did you start? Like, I started using Sony Vegas, I think it was back when it was like version 7 or 8 or something like that.
Whatever it was back in 2012, that would have been the one I used.
Honestly, I think we used the same one, because I think I started around that time too. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, cool. Yeah. And then I used like my microphone was like the standard, the Yeti, the one that everyone had. It was fairly cheap. It did a good job, but I didn't have like it was just kind of a standalone one. I had to bring it out every time I wanted it. Whereas now I've got one that kind of folds out from my desk, which is nice.
Oh, I gotta get one of those. I still don't have that.
It's not the most elegant setup ever, but it does the job. This is a Audio-Technica AT2020. It's really good. It does the job well. But my current computer just sounds so loud. You could probably hear it in the background now. It's just like,
I didn't want to point it out, but is that what that is?
It is.
Okay.
But the reason you don't hear it in videos is because I use Audacity to remove all the background noise, and it actually sounds pretty good. Apart from a little bit of artifacting, it is pretty good. And then we've got construction next door, which has been happening for like 2 years. I have to record from 5 p.m. until 7 a.m. That's my time to record. Or I'll record on Sundays because, otherwise it's just in the background all the time.
Thanks. So there's even like a set time that like you already know when to do everything.
Yeah, it really sucks though, because sometimes my sleep pattern doesn't line up with it. I mean, it can actually. I just heard some construction right then. They're almost finished with it, but they're not quite. And then I've got my aircon in the background. It's just a giant mess, but Audacity just cleans it all up.
No, I've actually never even used Audacity for that. Usually I use like audio restoration and stuff that whatever Sony has, but
all that stuff
I'll
works,
give it a shot. Yeah, I'll still give it a shot.
Man. As long as it gets rid of all the crap in the background, and I mean half the time you don't even need it because like you don't really have any sounds in the background as long as you're not recording when the planes are flying overhead or something.
Oh gosh, yeah.
It's more just for the computers that just won't shut the fuck up like this one. This one is just constantly going off of just.
It lets you know that it's on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When I first sent the audio to Martin, our editor for Countdowns, he's like, "Do you have like a PS4 on in the background or something?" I'm like, "No, it's my computer, man. Like, there's nothing I can." My computer's ages away from me. It's like half my room away, and it's still really loud. It's
jeez.
Chaotic.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, as for those of you that are listening, like as you heard from Dolan himself, though, like when you start. You don't need all the fancy tools, equipment, anything like that. And don't get me wrong, it's not that it's bad if at one point you can get yourself that, but just having any kind of tech to start. And like I always recommend, even to the kids that I saw in Career Day, a cell phone does so much already. Cell phones can record up to almost 4K, if not all, like a good amount of them can. The microphones in them are getting pretty well. Just keep it like by your mouth. Like there's a lot of shortcuts. There's a lot of ways to make really nice videos, guys. So take it from Dolan himself as well. He didn't start that way. I didn't start that way. A lot of people didn't start that way. So don't ever feel limited in terms of your tech, because you'd be very surprised how much you can do with just a cell phone. It's amazing. So Dolan, actually, now okay, as we talked about the past and how you started, you're a writer, got curious by YouTube, watching videos and blah blah blah. You dabbled onto it. So at some point though, how is it that you went from doing countdowns to animation? If I guess in a way, like, was that always the goal, or was that something you just liked and you're like, you know what, let's give this a shot?
We haven't even reached our goal yet, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, the animation's a step in the direction. No, the goal has always been something that isn't really compatible with YouTube, and it really sucks to say that. And it's something we've been working on, like, since SPD was launched, which is stories, animated stories. Not necessarily comedy, just stories in general. Not even real life stories, actually. Real life stories are okay. But just fictional storytelling, just like you'd see on TV shows and stuff.
So like, is it? Do you mean kind of like cartoons, like a cartoon story? You're talking about like kind of soap opera-ish, or what do you mean?
Yeah, all that kind of stuff, all of that, everything in that field. That was always the intention of us doing the animation channel, and sadly we still haven't reached it. And it's been close to 3 years since we launched the animation channel, probably 2.5 years. We still haven't quite gotten there. We've been working on on something like that for like 6 months or so. But in order to do something that would appear on TV is prohibitively expensive. They used to work with companies that are loaded out the arse with money, and so in order to create something on YouTube, it has to be under a certain budget and made in a certain amount of time. And in order to make something that looks nice, it's fairly expensive, and the amount of money you get from AdSense is just not enough to fund that kind of thing. And besides, the algorithm kind of doesn't entirely support that kind of thing. It supports actual real life stories and real life and that kind of thing. It supports vlogs and very easy to produce content, gaming videos that have stories in them, and then animated versions of those stories that you can put onto gaming channels. But when it comes to actual, like, maybe 10 to 20 minute, like almost cartoons involving storytelling, there's just been almost no precedent for it. And if there has been, please link me, because I apart from like dubbed comics and the story channels, it's very hard to find anything that is like creative storytelling. I mean, people go to YouTube to watch like your stories, like who you are. That's why vlogs do so well. But when it comes to like fictional stuff that you'd see on TV, like it's so close, but it's not there. It's really frustrating. But okay, so the original question was about like kind of what the goal was there. But yeah.
Well, if I may, sorry to cut you off again,
Sure.
but no, but you actually said so much already as it is, and that got me thinking. So like, I kind of knew in a way that that's what you were aiming for, because we have mentioned it, but I never knew it was like, I guess you could say to the scale of that. So then I guess, how about this then? From being where you are now, you know more of the algorithm, you know more about YouTube, being in the position you're in as opposed to, some other people. So what kind of would be the drawbacks aside from, like, let's say the algorithm, AdSense, like, how can I say this? I guess, let's say you had the site that you're looking for, whatever site that is to kind of support it. Would that be what you need? Like, is that the only thing you need to make this work? Or what is it that you feel is kind of stopping you from producing what it is you're trying to make?
Oh yeah, those platforms already exist. Like all these websites, like Google Play Movies, Netflix, like Crunchyroll, like Anime Lab, all this kind of stuff. That is exactly what we need. What we want to do is work on something over the course of 9 months or more than that, and then like a big long gestating project, and put it out there, and at the very least break even so we can keep doing it forever. Just creative storytelling like that. The only reason we haven't is because we just haven't been able to, because it was just such a small production. I don't know the first thing about doing that. I do know people now that have contacts at Netflix and all these different places, but again, it's the funding that's like the hard part. And so unless you're willing to work on an existing IP, I mean, that's something you learn if you work in movies or shows these days. It's that no one gives a crap about like new IPs. Like no one wants to take the risk on that stuff. You work on something that's already established. So if you're gonna make a cartoon, you make a Star Wars cartoon.
Something that's already made.
Yeah. Any app on the App Store is usually based on an IP, because that's a sure thing. You can be a very noobish company, but you come out swinging with like a game based on Harry Potter or Star Wars or whatever it is, and suddenly like you're making gangbusters. Those special cases of Half Brick, who make, I think, Fruit Ninja. That's just kind of luck. That's just luck, because like 1,000, like 10,000, 100,000 companies are all trying to do the same thing, and they're not finding any luck. And all it takes is just one company to be like, hey, yeah, we did it. It's because we're great and we know what we're doing. But in reality, it's just a roll of the dice,
So,
and if you got there first.
Well, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, yeah, being first, getting lucky, I'm not saying that's not a factor in a lot of people's successes, a lot of companies, but, I guess, because to the scale that you're at, like, I don't care what someone says, like, at least personally for me, like, I see you as such you accomplished something great as it is now with Planet Dolan, with Super Planet Dolan, so I guess it's like, have you considered, because of the scale that you have and the publicity you have you like contacted companies to be like, would you be willing to take a risk with me, so to speak, and buy the success I already have? Like, has anyone ever approached you? Have you tried? Any luck with that?
Oh, like a company buying us out? That's never happened. But we definitely get spammy fucking join our MCN emails every day. Yeah, that garbage. And occasionally we do get like a legit offer. Like when we did the book, that's because Pam Macmillan, which is a reputable Australian publisher, they reached out to us and they're like, hey, we want to make a book based on your thing. And I was like, oh my God, like I've actually heard of your company before. That's a miracle. Whereas most of the others are dodgy.
So then, well, here's a good example. So like, I'm more than sure you know him because I've seen you tweet at him. For sure Jazza, right? Have you ever met him?
Yeah. I haven't met him, but chatted to him, yeah.
Oh, well, so like him, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen in one of his, I think it was a vlog or one of his Draw with Jazza videos, he's mentioned like he has I think it's a TV show about teaching kids to draw, or is it something like that? I'm not sure. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't actually.
Yeah, he has something like that. I swear I've seen it. So I guess that's what I'm curious about. Like, have you tried contacting maybe like Jazza and been like, hey, you're an artist, I have a company, what about like collabing, making a cartoon with him? Or like, I'm just curious, have you tried stuff like that? Because I mean, I'm just saying, it'd be hard for me to think that someone would say no at the scale that you're at.
Oh, actually, in saying that, no, we actually just signed up with an agency that also managed Jazza. And so, they were the ones who were like, if you ever want to do something like that, let us know. But I mean, we only just started that relationship anyway. But no, I mean that's definitely the hopeful eventuality. But right now, we're just trying to survive on YouTube. The fucking algorithm's changing every 3 seconds, and you put out a video that you worked on for ages, it gets demonetized. You're like, yeah, and then you work on another thing, and you hope that it's just the constant dice rolls.
Yeah, I know, man. It sucks.
It's just every day you're like, thanks PewDiePie for saying some harsh crap. Now we all got to deal with the consequence.
Right, but
I mean, when you're dealing with like a whole bunch of people at a company, and you're kind of relying on this kind of stuff, it really is demoralizing. Like you have to make some really shitty decisions every day, and it really hurts to do that. Like when it's not just about you, and it's the people you're working with are relying on this as well, and you got to give them some bad news because goddamn PewDiePie. Then you're like, sucks.
Okay, so like you said, demoralizing, and it's funny because that's a question I was going to ask, so I might as well ask it now. Yeah, it's definitely demoralizing. I get it, especially for even people that I watch, aside from us, Planet Dolan. Like it gets hard. So for those that are listening, I mean, like I said, I know a lot of people at least look up to you. I mean, you have people who draw fan art, so you have a crowd. You have people that look up to you. And with you saying that it can be demoralizing, I mean, what's something that keeps you going? Kind of in a way to say, like, hey guys, like even I'm having a rough patch, but I'm getting through it, and here's how. Like, what can you share? What kind of keeps you going? How about that?
I'd like to say antidepressants, but I haven't been taking any. I guess the thing that kind of keeps you going is that you kind of have to. This is just life. You just got to keep going. You got to keep trucking through, and. I mean, our goal hasn't even been reached yet, and that's the major thing, is that when you always have a goal, you just keep pushing towards it no matter what. And our kind of creative storytelling is like, the goal. It's the one that a bunch of us really want to do, but we just haven't had the chance yet. And so, it's getting through the tough periods is, I mean, everyone has their own ways of coping. That's just how it is, but... you just got to keep going. Like, I mean, it's just like every other job. Like, if you're having a tough day, like, guess what? You still have to go do it, because like people are relying on you, and if you show that you can't do your job, then no one else is going to want to do it. So, yeah.
Right. No, that's true. So for again, those that are listening, take it from Dolan again. I mean, we're all gonna have rough patches. Whether our job sucks, life sucks, something happened, your computer's broken, your PlayStation broke, I don't know, anything. Okay.
I think something that people should really remember, though, and I think this is a really important business lesson too, is that learning from failure is really important, because it's like the number one thing that you will always remember when you hear about someone online who did something stupid. And you're like, that was dumb of them, I better not do the same thing. Like, that's one way of learning. But when you have like a close friend or someone you work with or something that screws up, like, you'll remember a lot more effectively. But when you screw up and it's really hard to admit that, then you'll like always remember that. And so you got to kind of take that failure and not just kind of hide away from the world. You have to learn from it and just keep progressing. Like, some of the best artists of all time, they failed constantly. They were always doing things that people didn't pay any attention to. The difference between them and all the other losers is that they never stopped. They just kept learning from it, and they kept advancing. This is exactly how I got started on YouTube. It wasn't like a sure thing from the very start. I had to have a lot of faith, working like every day on these scripts and videos and stuff, just to like hoping that it would work one day. And a lot of times I turned to Gooby, my wife, and I was like, I don't know if this is gonna work. I'm gonna keep going with it, but I just don't think any of this is gonna work. And that was like before anything took off. This was before doing even just the gaming channel, let alone the countdown channel. But you just got to keep going with it, and eventually opportunity comes, and you do have breaks, so that's nice.
So there's people that look up to you, Dolan, but you being who you are, who is it that you look up to? Is there anyone that you gain inspiration from? Like, for me, example, one of my biggest inspirations is Disney, Walt Disney. I've always looked up to him. I've always loved his animations, and I never want to be like him. I just want to be good enough to be considered and like someone that works just as hard. So how about for you? Is there anyone that you kind of look up to?
Depends if you're talking about just YouTube or outside of it, I guess.
Just you, man. Just you.
Oh no, I just meant like on the platform of YouTube or anywhere else. But anyway, yeah, I guess the number one person that springs to mind would be like Hideo Kojima, who joined Konami back in the day, and he was working as like the lowest, he was just testing games and helping them out with it and stuff, and he kind of rose over time to become game director on Metal Gear Solid, which is one of my favorite games of all time. And then he kept making sequels and stuff, and even though he probably didn't enjoy working at that company, he still kept going with it, and he put absolutely everything he could into his projects, and he'd help out like every member of his team. And even when things kind of fizzled out at the very end there and he had to leave the company, he still took quite a few people and he kept going. He found a different company to work with, and now he's back on the train. That kind of stuff I really respect. Just the kind of people who kind of rise from nothing and never give up and try and support the people they're with and keep going with it.
It's interesting how all of us have someone who I guess we could look up to, and how different everyone's role model can be, so to speak, and whether it be for one reason or another. So what, if you look up to him, and I actually know of him because I'm into gaming as well, I don't know too much, but yeah. So with that being said, then I'm pretty sure you're into gaming. Are you like a hardcore gamer? Because you did have a gaming channel, correct, or am I wrong?
Yeah. But I mean, the only game I've ever been hardcore in is World of Warcraft, and that was just. It doesn't even feel like a regular game. Like, I do have favorite games like of all time, but WoW was more. It was almost like this big social experiment more than anything else. Because when you reach the end game, you can like talk to people, like the actual voices and form relationships and stuff, and so that was like very interesting. But yeah, I'd say I'm a okay gamer. I'm not good at anything.
Well, have you been interested at all in like kind of making more in terms of like gaming content at all, or no? I think because we have one goal, which is like creative storytelling. Any distraction is like not going to slow us down every time. And so anytime we come up with something now, it's usually in that direction. It's something to either bring our characters out more or to go in the direction of stories. And so if we do gaming stuff, like something I've always wanted to do but I just haven't had the time. And in fact, the whole point of the movie channel originally was that I really wanted to do not movie reviews but movie analysis, where we kind of break down how the script works for a movie and then just kind of show like what the effect of different scenes were and how they might have improved by doing different things. There are a lot of movies that could have been great if they just made some really small changes, some really easy changes at the kind of the blueprint stage. That would be cool to talk about, but and I could do the same thing with games as well. Actually, it's weird how my brain thinks, because when you were talking about like small differences, make a big change, I don't know why I thought of the Planet Dolan characters and then like the way they look. So actually, I never even asked, and this is one of my big questions: is how did you come up with your character? And because you really want to make stories and such, is that why you kind of want everyone, who works at Planet Dolan to have a character? Or are you kind of making these characters kind of along and you've like assigned them? Like, how did you come up with making these characters?
All right, so again, that was more out of necessity when we first did Super Planet Dolan, because we needed characters. I already had the Dolan face, which was just like a really like dodgy Photoshop I did whipped together with like the meme, and I just replaced the face. And so it was actually Return of the Goo or Vim Homeless who kind of shopped together just the body for him. And then with Shima, when we first had her on, she was recruited as a writer but also the co-voice actor. And so we needed a character for her, and so he thought that maybe she should be like some kind of talking robot because she had all the facts. But then right as we approved that, he was like, actually, no, I was thinking about making her a pink cat and just giving her a bit more personality. I was like, yeah, sweet.
Okay.
And so, so since then, Yeah, we gave people characters more to feel like they have more of a stake at Planet Dolan, and instead of just being like a background figure. That's why we give people credit for like everything we can, kind of forefront and center. So a lot of channels, like, they might hire writers and just never mention them at all, which is fair enough. If you're a channel that's all about one person, it's actually in your favor to do that, because then it keeps the focus on you. But because we're a company, we can kind of dish out the credits a bit more, and so I wanted people to feel like they really belonged, and so we could feature the characters in all kinds of videos. I think the characters that we use in stories were always going to be like the voice actors, and I didn't really hire voice actors who like were incredibly good at their job. It was just people who were just entertaining, like fundamentally, like from their personality. That's why I hired Hellbent, Melissa, and Pringle, and Nixium, because they're all entertaining people, like both in and out of character. And so I thought that
did they come to you, or you went to them?
Depends who you're talking about. Like Hellbent, Pringle, Melissa all came to me looking for jobs. Doopy and Nixium I approached. Gergak also applied. My brother, he's just given me a hand, because it's more just a favor for me that he's still voicing.
To be honest, I never thought that was your actual brother. Every time I saw Zaragamba, I swear I thought you were making up a voice. Like, I never knew you had a brother.
Yeah, I mean, I think people were surprised at VidCon when he was there, and we were having a bit of sibling rivalry when we were doing signings, and people were getting really entertained by it because they didn't think he existed until that point.
Right.
But no, that, like, how I wrote him in the SPD episodes is exactly how he is in real life. Like, we're always going back and forth on things. Maybe not so much now because we don't see each other as much. That's just the case. So we I think with a lot of the other characters that we made though, and I think people probably got confused at the amount of characters we introduced in like DTS, the true stories. But I think the whole intention was that if we put those characters in a series, they would be kind of like background characters, and then you could kind of see yourself in the story, even if you aren't like the front and center focus, so that we could give focus to the characters that we do have dedicated plot lines for, that kind of thing.
No, I love that, because when finally Civil Spider was featured, I was thrilled. I didn't care if I wasn't talking or nothing. I'm just like, I'm there,
Yeah,
like that's such a great feeling.
That's I guess that's the whole point, is to give people kind of a feeling that they're involved in stuff. Although in saying that, I am absolutely terrible at managing community. If I could like hire anyone to do anything, although I'm not really hiring anyone at the moment,
yes, make sure guys, he's not hiring.
No, absolutely not. Is to manage the community and keep the fans involved. I mean, there's actually it's a good quote that Hideo Kojima did not too long ago, which is people asking him like about personal questions about him and like him getting involved with fans and stuff, and he was like, look, I let my work speak for me, and I don't put myself out there, because don't ask questions about me, ask questions about the game and stuff, because like then I can answer them, and that's where my that's where my strength is. And I feel kind of the same way. Like, it's like I work on stuff, I don't really want to put myself out there, and even me voicing stuff was out of necessity and all that. I like to kind of hang in the background and give other people like the front and center spotlight.
Gotcha.
And so,
I wouldn't expect that with you being, I mean, obviously this channel being all about, I guess so to speak, all about you, but I'm just saying you're like the main one.
Yeah, that was just if
necessity,
you kind of you reverse time, like what the kind of career I should have been in is something involving a company and me strengthening like an existing brand instead of trying to create a new one, like with me at the front and center. Like, that was never the intention. That was, as you said, just necessity. And so
so then you mentioned how what's his name, Kojima, right?
Yep.
Yeah, about his games and all. You came out with a new game too, Dolan Kart, which for those of you who aren't who are listening, if you haven't gotten the game yet, feel free to check it out. It's in the App Store. It's called Dolan Kart. It's free. Thank Dolan for that. But speaking of the game Dolan, how has that been? Are you pleased with it? What new changes can we expect, if there are some that you can share with us? Any insights?
Yeah, it's no secret. I mean, it's a fairly small game, but no, I'm really happy with it. The game developer, his name's Chris. He's an army, like he's a one-man army. It's insane.
Oh,
Like I'm
really?
giving him,
One guy?
yeah, yeah. He has someone else helping him out with like a lot of the UI and stuff. But I mean, he's coding like everything himself, and so
wow.
all I would do is kind of organize all the art assets. I do a lot of the I help him out a lot with the writing part of it. Just organizing like a lot of the team behind the scenes, and then I do a lot of QA and give him a lot of notes. A lot of my notes are just like, hey, things needs to be fixed, or it'd be nice to add this and that kind of thing. It was actually quite an enjoyable development experience. I never had experience producing a game before, and so that was it was really eye-opening. But I wouldn't say that it was. I mean, it was about the same amount of like stress as running a YouTube channel. Like it was,
Right.
it was it wasn't too strenuous or anything. It was quite pleasant. And so we launched it I think around about this time last month.
Yeah.
And it was nice to see some numbers fly in and stuff because we've been working on it for so long. And in terms of future content, we've got an update coming out hopefully in about a month, which is going to introduce 2 new characters, skins for pretty much everyone, a new level, and a whole bunch of like other kind of behind the scenes features of like changing up a lot of how the UI works and adding in little features and changing up all the leaderboards and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. So can we expect, or do we expect like having, I'm not going to say every single person at Planet Dolan, but like is there someone in Planet Dolan that we will see in the foreseen future?
Yeah. If you have a look at the poster for the game, when you do the video, it might be cool to just throw it up. I'll throw it to you if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
It shows all the characters that we have planned at the moment. And so one key character that people noticed and is also missing is Doopy's missing from it, but we've got a different character there instead, and so people might be curious about that. But it should make a lot more sense closer to actually putting her in the game. We do have something that will explain what's going on there. But yeah, most of the other characters there you can see like Hellbent and Sid, Ramona, Gogak. They should all be in the game eventually. Or Snoopy as well. Yeah, it's just about
awesome.
time. Like we could have put in like a whole bunch more characters, but I said to the game devs like, let's settle on 5 and then let's like really hone in on their abilities and let's polish them up to like a fine degree before we start adding in stuff. Like now that we've got the base done, I mean this was like the base game, like this was like the bare essentials. Now that we've done that, we can add in lots of stuff really quickly. But what we're doing for the first update though is we're giving ourselves some time so that we'll know how long it's going to take per update. But imagine after this one, we might be able to fire out more characters fairly quickly instead of having like 2-month gaps. We'll probably do it like pretty ongoing. We could add in more skins like any time. They're pretty quick to make.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. I look forward to that. It's getting now closer to the end point of the podcast, because of course I don't want to take up too much of your time, but there are a couple questions that I want to ask to finish off. But before we do, I just want to ask, like I like to ask, so like how have you liked the podcast? I mean, has everything gone the way you thought it was? Because I'm not sure if you really know how this podcast works. I mean, actually, also, second question is, do you ever plan to do something like this?
It's a lot of fun. I think doing stuff like this is exactly what I was talking about, like managing community stuff. Like this is the thing that I'm focused on is managing the people involved at PD and also creating new formats, which is another major thing. Although a lot of our focus has been doing projects off YouTube, such as what you saw with the game and the book.
Right.
But like we definitely want to hone in on YouTube as well and make sure that our content is the best it could possibly be. But yeah, we've done a live stream, like a VR live stream with Melissa before. The only reason we haven't done more of like doing QAs with the community and all that kind of stuff is because it just takes so long to set up. And I'm the only one like managing things. Sid is our operations manager. He kind of just handles a lot of the distribution and helps edit and stuff.
Right.
But when it comes to actually like creating formats and prototyping and putting them out there, scheduling, that kind of thing, that's usually down to me. and I only have enough time to do a certain amount of stuff. It's
Right.
if there was if I think the way it would work is if we had some kind of like sponsor for a podcast that could justify the amount of time we put into it, so that we could do other stuff as well. That might work. But at the moment, if we do a podcast, there's no way to justify the time and the cost, and just time spent scheduling and stuff. Like I'm really impressed that you keep scheduling to have guests on at certain times and stuff, and that's awesome, because that's like the hardest part. You ask anyone to organize a thing. You ask someone to organize a thing, and every time the thing that holds you back is that people don't show up, or they let you down because they don't hand in a thing by a deadline, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
We kind of get around that issue at PD by some sneaky tricks, such as
Like what?
well, if you want something within a month, what you do is you say the deadline is 2 weeks, and then they're like, oh, okay, 2 weeks, and they'll try and aim for that. They'll usually not make that, but they'll secretly aim for 3 weeks. And so at that point, the deadline they're aiming for is 3 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is like they've handed it in at 3 weeks. Then you go to them and you're like, okay, could you fix up this and this? And that might take them, between 1 to 7 days. And so you've gotten it in your month, but they don't know that. So that's just like a little tricky.
It's kind of like a mind thing.
Yeah, you can't really do that with organizing guests though, because like they have to show up at a certain time. When we did the fan fiction videos for the channel. Those
are fun. Just saying,
they're fun, aren't they? The only reason we didn't keep doing them is because I have to organize every single person, and it is just a nightmare. It's not just that people like may not show up. It's the time zones that are just.
I know, because we're all everywhere.
Exactly. If you're in the same building, that shit's easy. You could do that like every day, but we can't do that. And so unless someone is willing to step up and just like organize, times for that, it's just not going to happen. And so, over the course of PD, like anytime someone's been like, hey, let's try this format, like, I'll schedule the voice actors to do this. I'm like, yeah, good luck. And then they try, and it just takes months and months, because like, it's just part of a pipeline that is just never ending. So
yeah, dang, that sucks though, because like I always wondered why we start the fan fictions, but the thing is, the reason I love those so much is just, it's like what you said, I loved how many people we had on there at once. That was so fun. Oh man, well, I get it though. I get how scheduling's a pain. I mean, even I think on it, it's gonna sound bad, but like the only one I think I've ever missed so far was when you and I scheduled the first time, but again, that was due to my fault. But yeah, I can see why that would be a pain. But just saying, like, I would always help.
The best thing to do is just to confirm a time. I mean, that's the trick I've learned actually, of just like the day before, just being like, we still called for that, because usually what happens is by the day before, if like A, your sleep schedule's okay, B, if you haven't got anything on that like around that specific time that might like impact whether or not you can show up. I mean, it's the same thing when you ask someone to a party. Like, the number thing is you don't just send out a group message, because then no one's going to show up. You have to message people individually, and you also have to follow up like at least a day or two before to make sure that they're still coming. Otherwise, there's like no chance. That's always been my luck.
Oh, I love that analogy though. That's such a good one. You're so right. Yeah. Okay. Well, it kind of sucks though to see or to know now that like that's the big issue, why there's like certain things that we can't do, because some of them are really fun, such as the fan fictions, but I get it. So okay, you've basically have answered so many questions, even more than I thought I would even be able to ask. So now let's just start tying everything up. So for those that are still here listening, I'm hoping you're enjoying this, getting the insight from Dolan, hearing his backstory, all the work he puts into it, some hardships Planet Dolan as a company has faced, how he's trying to get through it, side projects. So like there's a lot of information, and I'm hoping a lot of you guys are enjoying it. So let's go ahead and start wrapping things up. So I guess if anything, I'm just going to have two last questions for sure. One of them is something I personally want to know that I think would be nice for everyone else to know, and then one would just be kind of like a general question. So I'll start with the general one. So I guess one thing I would like want to finish it with is, in the position now, like I said, that you are being a big YouTube channel and stuff, if someone wants to start a channel and someone how can I say this right? And someone wants to start, doesn't know how to start, what would be your recommendation to them as to for them to find what they can do, what they have to contribute, how to find what it is they're capable of?
All right. Well, first off, you just got to make a list of all your different interests, like all the things that you kind of do every day. It's like, your hobbies, or maybe you watch movies, maybe you play games, that kind of thing. And then just research on YouTube the kind of fields that usually do okay. Like, you can't make videos about turning cotton balls into something, because no one's going to watch that. It's impossible for the algorithm to pick it up and get it shared around. You have to pick a field that like people do stuff in. That's like the number one thing. At that point, you can do whatever you want, because like people have different skills in different areas. Maybe you're a good writer, and in which case you could do like video essays on like your favorite movies or movies coming out or whatever, or like games. Or maybe you're good at voice acting, in which case you could do things like comic dubs, and as long as you get permission from the artist to do that, you could probably do really well from that. You can use existing IPs, you dub over some comics for some really well-known stuff like Overwatch. I think a lot of people do Overwatch stuff. And if you're an editor, there are actually quite a few people who applied for editing had already shown that they'd edited things together that were like really polished. You just gotta kind of figure out what your strength is in that area, and then kind of show it off, and make sure that people can search for it. Yeah, kind of piggyback off things. I mean, when I first started, I piggybacked off the fact that people were playing World of Warcraft, and so I thought I could contribute by making guides and discussion videos and that kind of thing. I wanted to kind of give back to the community around that area, and so once that snowball started picking up, then you can transition to other more like esoteric things, like doing countdowns and stuff. You can kind of do whatever you want, really. I think, number one thing, make sure that you are working in something that you're interested in. Otherwise, you're going to get burnt out and you're going to get bored. And second off, do some research. And third off, just kind of like don't give up. Just keep going, because it's just going to be shit at the start, but it's going to pick up eventually. But the people who kind of give up and only produce one video every like 3 months, it's not going to work. You have to produce stuff really frequently. Look at the analytics, learn from it, and then adapt.
Which everything he said, guys, you're getting it straight from Dolan. I'm more than sure he would know a lot as opposed to some others. But thank you for sharing that insight, because he's so right, especially in terms of finding what it is that you like and finding a way to make that into something. Because all of us have our own interests. All of us have something we can contribute. We just got to find our own thing. So thank you for that for sure, though. And then now, my last question. Okay, so I'm not going to say that there's a lot in your life that you regret or anything, because I don't know. But I guess if anything, I would personally like to know, from having your channel and building it, working on it up until today, from the day that you started, has there ever been one thing, one moment that you're just kind of like, I sincerely wish I've never done that?
Tons of them.
Okay, what would be one of the biggest?
I guess the hardest thing that we went through was getting more voice actors on board. If I'd known that, I probably would have had different voice actors from the very start. Because, I'd voice videos on my own for so long, just out of necessity. Once we got voice actors on, people just fucking hated him like hellbent. When he first came on, he was just getting constant hate. He loved it. He thought it was hilarious. But nice. It always sucks when, someone that you really want to see do well, is just universally hated. It kind of drifted off after a while. But that'd be like one of the major things. But no, there are lots of regrets. And if you make videos on your YouTube channel that aren't as good, like your momentum just dives like really hard. And so anytime you put out a video, you're gonna have regret. So yeah, it's just constant regret more than anything else.
Well, how about like because this is kind of like something that you have addressed quite a few times. Like, for example, have you know how people always ask, like, oh, what happened to Shima? And you're constantly like, I don't know. None of us know. Like, has there ever been a time where, like, there was somebody you had to let go? Like, you actually had to let go, and you're kind of like, I wish I didn't, or it sucks that I did, or is that just part of the job?
Not every time. I really don't like letting people go. It's just the worst feeling in the whole world. You know, usually I have to spend like a whole day kind of summoning the courage to like, you know, let them know, because it just really sucks people's livelihoods and stuff. And half the time it's completely out of our control, because, you know, YouTube just goes up and down so frequently, and you can only diversify at a certain rate. So yeah, no, it always sucks. Although I will say that quite a few people kind of like, what happened is they'll just like take a break, or they'll go back to uni or something, and so you don't even have to like let them go. It's just they'll come back like eventually, or they'll just work on their breaks, that kind of thing. It's somewhat of a casual environment at PD, and so people kind of come and go frequently. It's only really when, you know, stats take a dive that you have to kind of make some harsh cuts. But yeah.
But all right, so overall, guys, this has basically been it. This is where I am going to end this podcast. I think it's gone on quite enough, and I have so much information to work with, and I hope that of everything that you guys have heard, there's been nuggets of information from Dolan that he said to kind of get you going, kind of get that momentum building as to what you're interested in. Because again, starting from, you know, Dolan himself being a writer, taking a risk, just making countdown videos, writing scripts, and then now look at where he's at. You know, he has his own little company, you know, Planet Dolan. He has Super Planet Dolan, working on projects, has a whole crew behind him. You never know the success that can happen from just doing one little thing, and that one little thing can make such a huge snowball effect into, you know, something much greater. So Dolan, overall, you know, thank you again for coming on the podcast. Thank you for giving me some of your time. You know, I really do appreciate it in terms of, you know, I'm not very well known as it is, but to those that actually do like what I do, like, I'm really happy you came. So just thank you for that, and thank you for letting them listen to you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, and is there any like last minute things you want to say?
Not really. If people are just starting up the YouTube channel, like, you know, I'm so sorry you're starting up in the post-apocalypse territory, but it's still not worth giving up. You know, it's still worth going for it. Sorry if you do.
Okay. Well, again, guys, this is it. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If there's anything you guys want to say, and something I want to try doing too, is if you personally have questions for any future podcasts, leave them in the comment section, and I'll be sure to write them down. And, you know, if it applies to the person I'm talking to, I'll definitely ask. But again, Dolan, thank you so much for being on this podcast. And for everyone listening, thank you for listening. Stay tuned for the next one. Have a great day. And Dolan, take care.
Yep, see you.